Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel where I Brigade of Beans, a diagnosed dissociative identity disorder system. And in today's video we are going to be discussing pseudomemories. Pseudomemories are memories that an alter has that did not happen to the body. These are often associated with introjects that are alters who have external influences but aren't exclusive to introjects. Any alter within a system can experience pseudomemories. Pseudomemories are not the same as false memories, they're not the same as implanted memories. It has nothing to do with the false memory foundation. It is part of the dissociative experience of alters. Normally when I make videos like this, I like to have specific articles and specific scientific evidence that I can reference. I don't have any for this video. I did look very briefly but couldn't find anything. Doesn't mean it isn't out there. So I want to acknowledge off the bat that this video is heavily lived experience based, and whilst I have some speculation as to why these memories occur and what functions they have, they're speculations, they're theories. They're my personal theories, not even scientific theories, so take this with a grain of salt. It is something that is very real, it is something that is very experienced, but the why, I don't know the why. For alters who experience pseudo-memories, these memories can be just as vivid, if not more vivid, than the body's real experiences, or they can be kind of vague and hazy and just kind of impressions. For ourselves, pseudo-memories act as a protective barrier between our traumatic experiences and our knowledge of them. So when we have had parts who have had pseudo-memories, and we haven't had a lot, but we have had a few, those memories that they hold have distanced themselves from our reality, keeping them removed from the trauma and keeping them safe in that way. We also know of other systems where their pseudo-memories can be traumatic or overwhelming, and they might be experiences that the body has never had. For example, they might have an alter who remembers being a bird and who remembers falling from the nest and that feeling of falling. And obviously the body has never physically been a bird, they've never actually fallen from a nest, but that memory might cover over another memory that did occur to the body. So they might have had a time where they were dropped from a high place and their brain couldn't comprehend it, especially if they were very young. And so the only thing that they could understand about it was that sense of falling. So when the memory was being held by that alter, it kind of changed forms and became a bird falling from the nest rather than them as a human child being dropped. This mix-up of memories can also happen with the emotional weight of a memory. So you might have an alter who, for whatever reason, they have memories of their own parents that aren't the body's parents passing away and dying, whilst the body's parents might be alive. And so that sense of loss could be covering up a different form of loss, and it might not be a literal death of the parents, but it might be parents who work away from home, it might be a separation with a boarding school situation, it might be their parents being very emotionally distant and their brain feeling like they couldn't connect, like their parents had died because there was no connection to those parents, but they hadn't actually died, so then they have an alter form who has that experience, and so the emotional weight, the emotional experience is the same, even though the literal experiences is quite different. So what about our own experiences? I'm going to touch on 4 different alters in our system: Helena, Gail, Katie Bell, and Jade. They span the spectrum of pseudo-memory experiences for our system. Obviously other systems will have different experiences as well, but they kind of are good pinpoints to give a comprehensive overview of our experiences. So first let's touch on Helena. We've spoken about Helena quite a bit on this page. She's made her own video, which you can find up above. Helena is an introject of somebody who did very significant harm to our system. Helena split, believing herself to be that external individual. Her memories of the abuse that we experienced had her in the position of the abuser and not the abusee. So her pseudo-memories were memories of the events that we had gone through, but with herself in a different position within those memories. So she thought that she had caused significant harm to our system, to our body. She obviously hadn't. She had been a victim, but our brain could not comprehend that in the moment, and how it needed to perceive safety was to put us in a place of power. So that is how she interpreted those memories, interpreted those experiences, and that is how she internalized her existence. She also continued to repeat those behaviors internally within the system because she fully thought herself to be this external person. Through therapy, through a lot of hard work, she was able to understand what had actually happened to her, that she had been a victim of crime and not a perpetrator of crime. And then took a long time, but she was able to reevaluate herself, her personhood, find a new place within the system, and recently-ish has now fused into another alter called Heather. Then we have Gale. Gale is a fictional introject of Gale Hawthorne from The Hunger Games, specifically the Hunger Games books, which we read in 2013. However, he was not the same character within the books. He was a, I believe, 14-year-old version of the character, whereas when we meet the character in the books, he's 18. So this was a pre-canon version of Gale. None of the book's events had any bearing on him other than like the backstory filling in. He had this vague sense of memory, it wasn't very specific, of hunting in the woods, of befriending Katniss, of having a family that he needed to provide for, but none of these memories were very strong. Whereas Helena's memories were a full, deep, complete belief that she was somebody else, Gale just kind of had feelings that he had been somebody else, that he lived in District 12, but they were quite flimsy, and he was dormant for a long time. When he came out of dormancy whilst we were doing therapy, it only really took one therapy session for him to break that dissociative barrier and realize that he was part of a system, part of a collective, and start to work on developing relationships with our system. And he became a very, very important part for our system. It became a very big source of comfort for especially a lot of the kids in our system. He became an adopted brother type, and he has also now fused. Our system fuses a lot. If you know us, you know that's common. He has split back off a few times and come back around and then fused again. He's kind of a part that steps out of fusions as necessary to fill in his role, but currently he is fused. Then we have Katie Bell. Katie Bell is a fictional introject from Harry Potter, and like Helena, she fully believed herself to be somebody else. She was 100% convinced she was a 16-year-old Hogwarts student. When fronting, would become incredibly distressed, would not be able to front for long because of the distress that it caused, because she'd be so confused as to where she was and what was going on. No matter what we did, we could not connect with Katie Bell. Her dissociative walls were so strong internally that we could not form a connection, and she was not able to regulate enough when in the body to read forms of external communication. In 2022, when a gatekeeper of ours was facilitating a lot of fusions, he gathered together a large collection of introjects, and they were fused together into who is now Merlot. Katie Bell was one of those introjects, and so she is now a part of Merlot. At no point in time when she was an active member of our system did we have direct communication with her. There were slight changes towards the end where she was starting to realize that maybe something was up, but it was very, very internal. It was very non-specific. It was very, very confusing for her, and it was very distressing for her to have these memories. These memories of her going to school, we don't know a lot about. We don't know a lot about her feelings towards them. Unlike Gale and Helena, who were able to articulate them for us later, Merlot still has the memories of being her and has the memories of having these memories, but because she no longer connects to those memories, it's hard for him to describe what it was like. And finally, we have Jade. Jade was not an introject. Jade split during our system discovery in 2020 and believed herself to be younger than the body and to be a student in a boarding school who was separate from our family. This was at a point in our life where we were processing a lot of new information, a lot of change. We'd just graduated high school. We were having realizations about complex mental health conditions. COVID was happening. We were moving house. We had started having very, very distressing dreams and started having flashbacks that we didn't know what they were. There was a lot going on, and our brain couldn't cope so that it formed an alter who was not just removed from ourselves and our experience, but removed from everybody that we knew. She also had a lot of grief and a lot of homesickness that she was experiencing, which I think for us was our brain trying to understand these feelings of losing our familiarity, losing our sense of routine from high school. We had lost a lot of stuff and changed a lot of stuff, but we were not allowed to perceive it as a loss, because graduation is a good thing. Graduation is an exciting thing. There were a lot of really cool things going on in our life. It should have been a time of positive change, but we were an undiagnosed, unknowing autistic person who just lost all of our routine and were very, very confused about a lot of things. Like, we weren't doing well in 2020, and we didn't know what those emotions were. We didn't know how to feel these emotions, and so our brain gave us someone whose subconsciously it was rationalized why she would be feeling these emotions, why all of these things would be taking place, and that for us was having someone who was so far removed from our reality, but it was our brain doing what it needed to do to be able to cope. Hi everyone, it's Pan here to finish off the video for you all. We did get cut off by the camera dying, but what we were saying there was that Jade has now also fused a few times and is now also a part of Heather. For some individuals, for some systems, pseudomemories don't just refer to memories that didn't take place in the body, but specifically refer to memories that take place in the inner world. We don't categorize them this way, and it's not a particularly common categorization, but it is one that exists and is worthwhile noting. So the memories that alters are talking about when they're talking about their pseudo-memories are ones that they as an alter have experienced within the inner world. And then finally I want to talk about the experience of second-guessing your memories, of not knowing whether something is true or something is not true. Especially if you are a system who experiences a lot of pseudo-memories, it can be really hard to tease apart what happened to you in your childhood. There's this guessing of, did this actually happen? Am I making this up? Did I watch it on TV and think that it happened to myself? Was I just told that these things happen? How do I know? And part of it is you might not know ever, but oftentimes that knowing comes with a lot of system work, therapy, self-work, doing journaling, connecting with other members of your system, and communicating with them to fill in the gaps. This might be different for other systems, but for ourselves, we found that memories that are shared between many alters, or themes that are shared between many alters, tend to indicate a trueness of memory. We struggle a lot to determine what of our memories are real and what aren't real, especially because a lot of our memories have unreal qualities. A lot of our traumatic memories, the people involved in them don't have faces, or we can't hear their voices, or the rooms that we are in have no windows and no doors. And obviously that can't literally be true. Those aren't possible spaces to exist in, but we believe it's part of our dissociation that we can't see these things, that when those events happen to us, the faces were there, the doors were there, the windows were there, but through our dissociation of the memory, through the division of parts, we have lost part of our external reality. However, these memories, even though they don't make sense, are consistently showing up between alters, and the way that the memories are distorted consistently shows up between alters. Even if it is at a different time period, our body is a different age, it's in a different location, the ways in which we remember or forget things or things get obscured is consistent. So that consistency implies that that's how our brain functions, and so the memories, even if we can't fully see them, even if we're lacking bits and pieces of evidence, are very likely to be real, even if we don't want them to be. So that can happen to other systems as well, probably in different ways, but having these experiences where you don't know if a memory is real or not, and if you have alters who do have pseudo-memories, if you have introjects or non-introjects who remember things that definitely didn't happen to the body, like growing up in the 1950s, if you were born in the 2000s, or going to Hogwarts, or just having things that can't possibly be true, it does make things quite difficult. And for those who are out there struggling to make sense of it and are trying to work out what is going on, what has gone on in their past, I would, as normal, remind you all to take it slowly. The thing with the past is that it's already happened. You can't go back and change it. So there's no rush to solve this mystery because it's not going anywhere. It has already happened, and you can spend as much time as you need working it out. Maybe you get your answers really easily. Maybe there is someone in the system who can corroborate them, or who can explain the gaps in there or explain the distortions. Or maybe it takes a really, really long time for you to work this out, and it takes until the point that you get to trauma work to be able to understand fully what happened. That brings me to the end of today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. We have got a new camera, so the quality is probably different. We thought that we had a mic that worked with it, however, when we plugged it in and we listened back to the recording, it had a horrendous ringing noise in it, so we can't use that microphone. There will be another microphone at some point, but for now I've got the camera, which makes it significantly easier to get a microphone that works, so we can update the audio quality. Thank you to everyone who has joined us on Patreon, especially those members who have paid to be able to help us out. That is the only reason that we can afford to upgrade our equipment, and it is really exciting to be able to do that with this camera. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.